This is the Change Your City podcast. I'm Michael O'Neill, and we're talking with leaders from around the world who are making a difference in the global cities of the world. Hi, I'm Michael O'Neill, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Change Your City podcast. In this podcast, I'm talking with leaders around the world about how we can make a difference in the global cities of the world, wherever we live, work, and play. Wherever there are global cities, there are multi-generational, multicultural, multi-faith companies, businesses who full of people who need real hope, which means that Christians in the marketplace, Christians in the workplace, have this amazing opportunity to show and share the hope of Jesus wherever they work. I've heard from multiple mission leaders, global mission leaders, who say that the workplace is one of the, if not the most strategic mission field in the world. And Billy Graham once said that he believes one of the next moves of God is going to be through the believers in the workplace. So what does that look like? What does it look like for followers of Jesus to live on mission wherever they work? And so that's what we're going to talk about in this episode, and that's why we have Carl Porter here, all the way from, you've been living in London, England, and then in the process of moving as we record this episode to Tampa, Florida. So you have a lot of experience with working in the workplace, showing and sharing Jesus in the workplace. Yes, in London, but in other cities really around the world where you've done some, where you've been on business, traveled on business, done some leadership development training. And so really glad you're here. You've been a great partner with our church, in especially in the area of helping us think through how do we be the witnesses God wants us to be in the workplace. And so, Carl, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and your particular ministry focus as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be with you. Yeah, I'm Carl. I'm married to Sarah. We've got two daughters, Lyra, who's 15, and Sophie, who's 9. And yeah, we are living in England at the moment, but in the next few weeks, we'll be moving over to Tampa in Florida. And I became a believer around 10 years ago and have spent those last 10 years involved with a workplace ministry in central London. So I've kind of grown up as a Christian in workplace ministry, and we're moving to Tampa to help establish workplace ministries, Lord willing, in downtown Tampa, St. Pete's, and other areas where there's businesses.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about your, if you can, and just your story a little bit about, because growing up in England, you didn't even know the gospel, and then from that point to surrendering your life to Jesus, and then the role that other Christians played, especially the church in the city of London at this time where you were working, and the role that they played in helping you to follow Jesus.
Yeah, so I did. Yeah, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So in England, I didn't meet a Christian until I got into my 30s, and I wasn't prayed for or heard the gospel until I got into my 30s. And my life was very much like, I think, millions of others. I left school at 18. I started working, moved to London, a big city, and got stuck into the work hard, play hard lifestyle. So I would leave for work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get home at 9 p.m. at night. And I would do that Monday through Friday. And before I was a Christian, with Play Hard, you'd stay out after work in the pub, and you'd drink and you'd socialize. So I didn't see my family for most of the week. Saturdays I was exhausted, so not going anywhere. And Sundays, because I wasn't a believer, I wasn't thinking of going to church because I was lost, and that's when church was open. So it was a complete stranger who I ended up bumping into that first prayed for us as a family and then shared the gospel with us. And this is the reason for workplace ministry, because so many people are living that life where they're giving 70 to 80% of their week to work. Unless we can fire up Christians to be living out the gospel in workplaces, the chances of them never bumping into a Christian and therefore never being prayed for and never accessing the gospel are really really high. I met that believer in the summer of 2014. I came to faith in Jesus, and I ended up wanting to find a Christian in the city because I was kind of on my own in the garden when I came to faith. And I Googled Christians in the city, and it was the name of a website for a church called St. Helens Bishopsgate. And I said, I think I'm a
And
Christian.
that was the name of the ministry, Christians in the City? So you Googled Christians in the City, just looking for some Christians in the city, but that was
Yes.
the name of the organization.
Yeah, so whoever named that website did a really
Yeah,
good
that's
job. It does
brilliant.
exactly what it says on the tin. And yeah, I sent them an email saying, I think I'm a Christian. I'd like to know more about the Bible. And here was the great thing about having a ministry in the city centre. As a brand new believer, Monday through Friday, during my working hours, so lunchtimes and breakfasts, I met with other believers. I heard the Bible being taught. They confirmed my testimony, and they immediately said to me I was the pastor in my place of work. So go and share what I know about Jesus. So I had 5 touch points through the week for discipleship in the Word with other believers and a shared mission. And then I had my home group on a Wednesday night with church and a Sunday. If I didn't have that ministry in the city centre, I'd have only had 2 touch points in the Word of God if I could have made home group because of my commutes, rather than 7. So if we can establish rhythms of ministry where God sovereignly gathers people into small spaces and then every day God sovereignly scatters
Mm.
them back, then what we can do is we can get the gospel ringing out there, we can disciple people there, and then they will move back to the suburbs and surrounding towns, take the gospel with them, strengthen churches by plugging in, and bringing their families along.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you mentioned just the percentage of time that people spend in the workplace. And sometimes we talk about being stewards of what God has given us. Faithful stewards of the resources, maybe the money that God has given us, stewards of the talents or the skills that God has given us. It's important for us to be faithful stewards of the experiences that God has brought us through. For example, Carrie and I, my wife and I, are passionate about adoption and orphan care because God took us through the experience of adopting our son. So we need to be faithful stewards of what God has given us, the experiences God has brought to us. But I think sometimes we don't think about being a faithful steward of the time that God has given us. And if the majority of people are spending most of their time, the majority of their time in the workplace, that seems to be an opportunity for the gospel to advance and for disciples to be made. How can we, as mission leaders, how can we encourage people to be more faithful stewards of the time that God has given us in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we need to start thinking about where God is moving our people through the week. So the
Mm,
biggest kingdom resource that we steward in the church are the people,
yeah.
and the people are the access to the gospel. And I think the church is doing a really good job of gathering believers at the home end of the commute and having worship and discipleship in homes. But I find as I meet Christians in cities around the world, quite often, they're sent for 70% of their week to their workplace, but they're left all on their own. So they're kind of left to figure out what evangelism and discipleship might look like, and they're supposed to do that on their own. And it's really hard to do ministry on your own. I was in an office of 7,000 in the UK, and as far as I know, I was the only Christian.
Mm.
So if I didn't have that team of believers that I met with in my lunch breaks and through the week to keep me going, it would have been really easy for me to shrink back in that environment. So I think if we can think about where people are going, and if we can begin to team up believers at the work end of the commutes, and then have disciple making staff that are spending Monday through Friday in those places where God is gathering people, we can start to set up rhythms for ministry, whether it's evangelism, discipleship, preaching, like all of those options are available. But I think we need to respond. We need to ask the question, what is God doing with our people, and what is God doing with the people in the city every single day? So an example for London of this is where I worked in the Square Mile, which is the financial district. Every single day, God gathers 600,000 people into 1 square mile. And then every single day, God scatters those people back. And that is 1 in 52 of everybody that works in the UK is in 1 square mile. So God couldn't be making it clearer to the church, hey, we need some work to happen here. And if the gospel rings out faithfully here, people are going to take it with them into the suburbs, into the surrounding towns, to the nations.
Yeah.
And I think in global cities, those rhythms will be happening. So, what are the rhythms of the city? Where are our people going? And then, if we can understand where they're grouped up, that's a great place to start doing ministry. And it
Yeah.
can happen Monday through Friday.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then with an example like London as a global city, I know we were talking over lunch just a little bit ago. It's there are people among the 600,000. There are many who are from around the world. Like how many percentage wise would be from outside of even the UK?
Yeah, this is why workplace ministry is so exciting. I was working for a global company in a global city. So 600,000 people in the square mile, 300,000 from the UK, 300,000 from the nations,
Mm,
62% under the age of 39 and 63% male. And the workplace for me was a unique place because people of all generations wanted to talk to me, from the 18-year-old new starter to the person that was retiring. So I could do cross-generational mission way easier than I can do outside of the workplace. But we also had people from different cultures and living in different countries that I could connect with. So from my desk, I could do cross-cultural, cross-border, cross-generational mission. And here's the good news, my company was paying for all of it.
right.
So we're trying to help workers see work as a 50-year company-sponsored mission trip.
Yeah.
And if we're really invested in that, we could, as believers, have a global footprint for the advance of the kingdom without ever leaving our desk.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good way to see it, and the church can come alongside, and church leaders can come alongside and really encourage that, and equip and mobilize the workforce. So uh, there's also that element of growing in your faith as you share. You became a believer, follower of Jesus, and you began to immediately share this hope that you have, as the Bible talks about. Like, be ready to give a reason for the hope that's in you. And you were just doing that from the very beginning, and you were being encouraged to do that. And your faith grew because you were sharing. And I think sometimes we maybe miss out on that as a way to grow in our faith. It's actually to share our faith, and God uses our bold sharing to grow our faith. How are you going in Tampa, for example? How are you going? What are some practical ways that you're going to encourage people to share their faith in a way that will and help them understand that this is very essential to actually growing in your faith?
Yeah, again, good question. So I really believe in the Ephesians 4 model for ministry. So the job of those that are set aside is to equip the saints for the work of their ministry.
Mhm.
So all of those people that are going into offices, factories, hospitals in Tampa are the saints who we need to equip for the work of ministry. So the first thing is to help them see that it's their ministry. Um, and then I think it's a case of helping them practically with how do you kind of keep Jesus on the agenda in those long term relationships that you have with your workers. And we've got some little tools that we can use for that. A simple one is I encourage people to speak about spiritual things naturally and natural things spiritually. So if on a
Say that again. Say that one more time because I think that's really good.
spiritual things naturally, natural things
Yeah.
spiritually. So a silly example is on a Sunday night before I went to work, I would do my admin in evangelism. And one of the things I would do would be think, what are the big things in the news that people will be talking about tomorrow morning? So that's the natural thing that I can bring a spiritual truth to it. And if somebody asks me about my weekend, what did I learn in church that I can share with them? So that's my spiritual thing naturally. So if somebody asks me about my weekend on a Monday, I can simply say it was a great weekend. You know, I went to watch the football with the family. We had a good time on Saturday, had a meal out. Then we went to church on Sunday, and I learned that Jesus Christ is Lord of all. Like
Mm.
He's Lord of you, He's Lord of me. Like, have you ever thought about that? So it's a simple way of dropping a spiritual truth in, and then. You know, if there's something going on in the news, we just had the big election cycle. People might be talking about politics. I wouldn't offer an opinion, but I just say I'm praying for our leaders.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really difficult time for them. I'm praying for our leaders to have a heart like God's,
Yeah.
to care for the poor, the widow, the oppressed, to um, lead through service, to want to sacrifice for the people. That's what God's heart is like. Have you ever thought about what God's heart is like? So, helping people think through practically just some tools, but then the key element, and this is key, is working hard to understand who are believers that work near them, and how can we get them teamed up together. So, like me, if it's once a week on a Monday morning, they can just meet where they work and they can pray together about their colleagues, about the mission. They can spend some time in the Word, and then the next week they can share again. And that is key. Ministry is not a business for us to be doing alone.
It's a community project, isn't
It's
it?
a community,
a community mission. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we go with the gospel, we will grow in the gospel.
Yeah.
But we must go together.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. As we think about changing our cities, and anybody listening to this, watching this, they want to be used by God to change the city in which they live. What's a word of encouragement for those who really want to change their cities through the workplace?
Yeah, one big word of encouragement is the sovereignty of God.
Mm.
So God, we know in Acts, sets the times, the boundaries, like the places, the people, the seasons. So you are exactly the right person in exactly the right place with exactly the right people around you. So we can take great confidence in that. So I think being able to recognize that, being able to pray regularly for the people around you, being able to pray regularly with others, for the people around you, and then kind of just step out in love. I think the reason the workplace is such a good place for mission is because Christians will be living well, which means we will be caring for the people around us. We will be interested in their career. We will be serving them. So they already know our character.
Yeah.
And as they know our character and they know our love, they know we're on their side. So then when it comes to start sharing something with them, even if they don't respond to the gospel in repentance and faith, they'll know we are genuine.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the workplace is such a good place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're doing great work, and we'll put your contact information. You said it's okay. Put your
Yeah,
contact
absolutely.
information in the notes, episode notes, so that people can reach out to you. And you're a great resource, especially when it comes to encouraging people, equipping people to be witnesses in the workplace. And you mentioned just those key habits of praying for people. We Dave Ferguson, some other leaders have used the acronym BLESS, and we use that acronym around here just to help people think about whether they're in the neighborhood or at home or on the ball fields or where in the workplace. Think about, okay, how are you in prayer, being in prayer, listening to others, what they're going through, or what their questions are, eating with them, hey, going to lunch with them, using those natural rhythms of life to connect with them, serving them, as you said. As you listen to them and eat with them and connect with them, you're going to know their needs, and you want to meet their needs, and all of that is so that we can share the good news of Jesus, how He's changed our lives. And again, through the workplace, that can happen and have a ripple effect from one global city, wherever that whether it's Tampa or Atlanta or London or wherever it is, and it can impact the whole world.
Absolutely. Can I share one game-changing question
Yeah.
in line with that
Yeah.
as well? So my one game-changing question to get the gospel out at work is to simply ask people, is there anything keeping you up at night?
Hmm.
Is there anything that's stressing you out right now?
Mm.
And then I follow up with, can I help you with that? Can I pray with you about that? And that will just open up
Yeah.
so many good conversations.
Yeah.
And it gives us opportunities to serve and to bless.
That's right. Yeah. And then the Lord uses us however He wants to use us in His mission. So that's great. Thanks, Carl, for taking the time to be on this episode with us, and look forward to what God's going to continue to do in and through you, your family, and your ministry. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of the Change Your City podcast. Look forward to seeing you next time as we discuss with someone else, another global mission leader, about how God's using them wherever they live, work, and play, what we can learn from them, how we can be inspired to them to be the witnesses God has called us to be in the cities where we live. Talk to you next time.